Okay, so you've walked out of the interview. Now what? What do you do? What are the next steps between the time period of you leaving an interview that you're buzzing about, possibly you're excited about, you're wondering, did I get it? Even if you don't want it, it's always nice to be wanted. Or even if you don't want the job yourself, it's nice to be wanted. And it's nice to know whether you were able to be skillful enough to get the role. So here's my advice on what to do when you leave the interview. Within 48 hours, usually it should be within 24 hours, make sure that you email the person that set up the interview and say thank you. If you have access to email the people that were interviewing you, especially if they were a supervisor or manager and they gave you their business card, that's an invitation to contact them directly. However, it's sort of polite to sort of unspoken office politics politeness to contact the person that set up the interview and ask them to pass on your thanks, as opposed to going around them and contacting who you interviewed with directly, unless they gave you their contact details and their business card when you were there. And make sure that you do that within 24 hours. Now, it used to be that sending a paper thank you card was not only completely acceptable, but was the thing you were supposed to do. It's right up there with the days where we bought resume paper. In America, it was a crisp white, sort of manila colored paper, or crisp manila colored paper with, sometimes it had a texture to it. It was a little bit thicker cardstock. And I wonder what happened to all the companies that printed that stuff, because that's way out the window now with digital files. So really, in this day and age, you need to be sending a digital thank you. I wouldn't call them on the phone, because if they're not going to hire you, it's an awkward conversation for them. They will not appreciate you for that. You can send a paper invitation or a paper thank you. I actually don't think there's much wrong with that. However, I can just tell you from personal experience, the one time I received a paper thank you card, they did not send an email first. And it made me question how much knowledge they had of technology if they're not thinking to send an email first. Because at least with an email, it arrives instantly. And if you haven't heard back, you can check and say, I haven't heard back. With a paper thank you card, you don't know whether they received it or not unless you send it recorded delivery, which might seem a little bit over keen. But I was actually right to think this, because I wasn't part of the interviewing process. I met this person to walk them around. I thought they were very nice. When I saw the card come in, it made me go, because I knew they had not sent an email thank you first. They hired this person, and my concern was sadly something that should have been looked at, because this person did not have the technical skills to be supporting the leader of the company, and they often were coming to other assistants to try and supplement the part that they didn't know. And sadly, this just kind of went round and round, and that person got frustrated, and the founder got frustrated, and or the leader of the company got frustrated, and no one ever fully said what was happening. It wasn't my place to say so, but it all came from a suspicion, because a paper thank you card came in the mail without an email thank you card coming through first. So if you're thinking about sending a paper thank you card, be my guest. Just make sure that you first send an email. Okay, so you've gotten the thank you out of the way. Now, what is also a time to use the thank you for is if you've walked out of the interview and you had a question that's bothering you. Now, I've done this where either a question bothered me and I wished I'd given a different answer, or I told them about something that I said, if I find that information, I'm going to send it over to you at the end of this interview. I will use the thank you to say, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed my interview and getting to know so-and-so. Can you please pass on this link? We discussed it in the interview, and I said I would pass this information on. If the person that arranged the interview is the person that I actually be working for, sometimes I'll say, have a great time at that conference. Don't forget to put in your calendar that you needed to pack that water bottle you said you were going to forget. Like something that just is a little bit extra, but also a time to go back and maybe better answer a question or better make a connection via the email follow-up I kind of use that as an opportunity. That's something you can also use an email thank you for. Now, when you leave an interview, you may want to ask, and one of the things that I ask are, what are the next steps? If you want to take me further through this process, do you mind me asking what the next stages would be, when I should hear something by? Because then that way it sets my expectations. I think one of the biggest things that, one of the biggest issues with miscommunication all comes out of managing expectations. If somebody tells you this car is going to be amazing, it's the most amazing car you've ever had, it's the shiniest, it will make you breakfast, it'll do these things, and the one time it does something wrong, one time it goes over a bump the wrong way, then the whole car is terrible. If you oversell something, the whole thing is just absolutely ruined. So, and that has to do with, that's an extreme example of managing expectations. So when you go in and you talk to them, I always like to ask, I'm a bit cheeky, and I'll ask how many people they're interviewing, how long it's going to take, when do they think they're going to be wrapping up this process? Is there a next step, or was this the final stages? I will ask those questions because I want to know, I want to manage my expectations. And then when you leave and you've said your thank you, if they said they would be deciding this week and you don't hear this week, then you probably didn't get the role. Now, I know a lot of people that don't hear anything for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, never again, which is very, very poor form, but also, and very unprofessional, but is very common these days with both companies and candidates, which we will get to in a moment. But I think after you send the thank you, they didn't forget about you. They know exactly who you are. If they want you, they will come get you. Do I think that you should be applying for other jobs? As I said in the talking about the mindset you should have in going into the interview and coming out, you should always be applying for more jobs. You should never put all of your hopes on one particular role if you need a job. If you are working somewhere, you're happy where you work, and you're just entertaining an idea, great. But if you are looking to make a change, you should be applying constantly as much as you can. It's always better to be able to say no later. I know some people that stop interviewing when they'll stop everything, stop applying, stop interviewing, everything when they get one good interview lined up. They just mentally cannot handle it. And that is, in my opinion, a mistake, because if that one thing falls through, then you have nothing to fall back on, and it puts a lot of pressure on you in the interview. It puts a lot of pressure on you afterwards. And so you almost have to walk out of an interview not caring whether you got it or not, because you didn't have it in the first place. You've got nothing to lose in that case. You don't have a job that you are now losing. You didn't have the job in the first place. So you got to walk out of there, you got to be zen, and you got to apply for the next job. You got to be looking for the next thing. When you get an offer, then that's a great thing, and that's something to play with, and you can decide what you want to do there. And that, in my opinion, is really the only time that is appropriate after the thank you to reach back out to a company. If I've done a couple of different interviews and I've had an offer from one company and I haven't heard from the other, and I really want to make sure that they are not going to pick me and I have all the information I need, then I will contact the other company, say I had an offer, make sure that they are not in a place to make me an offer so that I can make the best decision for me. Other than that, I think you really have to, it's really hard, it's really easy to say and really hard to do, but I think you really need to just walk out of an interview, walk away from the job, and pack it away in your mind and just let it go. What will be, will be. But when people are always worried, it's been 3 weeks, I don't know what's happening, by you calling, it is in no way going to help the process whatsoever. The only time that it might hurry up the process is if you already have a job offer somewhere else. There are a lot of things, just because you haven't heard doesn't mean they're not going to offer you the role. I know I have been a hiring manager. I've been involved in hiring processes. I've seen a job be approved. We were about to make an offer. Then it was removed from the table. We were told we could not make offers, that there wasn't in the budget. Then a month later being told it was back in the budget, we could hire who we wanted. And it was very frustrating because we almost lost the candidate, and luckily we didn't. That we were very lucky considering it was a whole month later. But those types of things happen. You think if they're interviewing right now, that must mean they have budget, that must be everything's worked out. And there's internal politics going on at companies that you're not aware of. So it is quite possible you might still get the job after 3 weeks. I wouldn't say that that means you're not going to get it. But what I can tell you is by you calling again, they're not going to suddenly go, oh my goodness, we lost your CV, we lost your phone number, we wanted to hire you, we couldn't figure out how to use LinkedIn. Like, that is just not going to happen. So you just kind of have to make sure that you get yourself into a good mindset to just let it go when you walk out the door.